Hello, and welcome to On My Shelf. Today I'm talking about a lovely adult memoir that explores divorce, grief, and ultimately joy. You Can Make This Place Beautiful by Maggie Smith is a memoir of divorce written in short vignettes. It's about Smith's grief as she processes the loss of a partner and her joy as she begins to reconnect with herself, rebuild her life, and move forward into joy. Smith takes her readers through her rise as a poet while simultaneously showing her deteriorating marriage, then the after effects of both. I wasn't sure I'd connect to this book because I'm happily married, but it was so beautifully written, I found it hard to put down. Maggie Smith is a poet who's probably best known for her poem, Good Bones, which is also the title of one of her poetry collections. She also wrote the poetry collection Goldenrod, as well as others, and the journal-like short essay book, Keep Moving, Notes on Loss, Creativity, and Change. Here are some of my favorite things about this book. The vignettes. They were short, which allowed me to stop when I needed to stop, without feeling like I was in the middle of something. And they all connected in intricate and compelling ways. Because of the short chapters, the book flew by, and as I neared the end, I found myself feeling a little sad. I didn't want to leave it behind. That's a pretty clear sign of a book's greatness. Number 2, prose that read like poetry. Because Smith is a poet, of course her prose read like poetry. She used recurring images and refrains all throughout that effectively emphasized the point she was making. This made the pages fly, too, because we all know I'm a sucker for prose that reads like poetry. Number 3, we didn't get to know everything. People who write memoirs are brave. It's a hard thing to open up your life to strangers because strangers judge without truly knowing. I liked that Smith kept some pieces of her experience to herself. She'd say things like, "This isn't for you." It was like a line in the sand. She was saying, I'm telling you the truth, but I can't tell you all the truth because some of it isn't mine to tell, or some of it isn't necessary to understand, or some of it is just too hard to explain. I liked that she didn't allow us access to every corner of her grief, but left some mysteries and reminded us we don't have to know everything to understand the situation. From a craft perspective, I noticed several things. Number 1, interesting structure. Smith used these short chapters, but she also incorporated poems and quotes. It had a sort of scrapbook of emotion feel to it. I never think about writing this way, but why not? It's a stream of consciousness, but also intentionally planned. I almost felt like I was sitting down across from Smith and listening to her tell her story. It was a conversation with the reader, and I found it delightful. Number 2, recurring questions and motifs. Smith used recurring phrases and questions and motifs to communicate grief and joy and the awakening she was experiencing. It was a very effective use of repetition. As a writer, you try to avoid repetition unless you're underlining a point. Smith's repetition showed not only what was important to her during each stage of her grief process, but it also clearly communicated her grief. We all know what it's like to feel like we've learned something, only to learn we actually didn't and we have to learn it again. That's what Smith's repetition felt like. She was learning and relearning and feeling the frustration of it, and we were experiencing it all right along with her. Number 3, its uniqueness. This was a very different kind of memoir. It has the feel of being written in real time, like Smith was trying to process her grief through the writing of it. She kept hinting that there may not be a neat resolution, at least not in the plot. But in the emotional journey, maybe. I love this. It reminded me that not every memoir will have a resolution, because sometimes we experience something that takes years or our entire lives to heal from. Just like life, a book's resolution isn't always neat and pretty. Sometimes it's less about what you do or what happens and more about what you learn from it all. So here's what we can take away from You Can Make This Place Beautiful. Number 1, you can curate a memoir to protect people, and there are ways to do it. Memoirs, of course, don't involve just the author. They involve the people in the author's life. That's a scary thing for me. But Smith, by saying things like, "This isn't for you," or You don't need to know this part of it. Shows that there are ways to protect people we want to protect. She even goes so far as to say her kids are off limits. We can still tell our story without giving the public access to the people in our lives. Number 2, find the connections. There's this thread that goes through our lives, things that recur, things we notice. Smith's poetic way of revisiting things she'd experienced earlier and then later in her life reminded me to find these connections, bring them to the forefront, seek them out. Life is a series of connections. People, things, experiences. If we keep our eyes open, we'll be able to find them. Number 3, focus on what you have instead of what you don't have or what you've lost. Smith's memoir was a reminder that sometimes when experiencing grief or disappointment, we slip into pessimism. We can only see everything we're missing or that we've lost. In the book, she wrote about how she'd never have a golden anniversary, at least not for marriage, but she'd have it with other people, parents, sisters, children. I thought that was so beautiful. Keep looking for the good things in your life instead of the broken things. We all need that reminder every now and then. That's it for today's On My Shelf. If you're interested in hearing an author's perspective on books, movies, and sometimes TV shows, be sure to subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.